Like you, I have observed boatloads of sales calls. I mean, in 40 years, absolutely tons of sales calls in person. And these sales calls can be quite an adventure. I mean, apparently, most salespeople just show up and wing it. Are they doing that on purpose? Are you actually training them to show up unprepared? This is Sales Untraining, a very different kind of sales podcast. 3 out of 4 salespeople are failing. They're falling short of their revenue. Why doesn't sales training work? That's what this sales podcast is about. It's your weekly sales strategy guide designed to rewire your sales brain. Welcome to Sales Untraining. I'm Kelly Riggs. Great to have you alongside. It is your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. Hope you'll take a moment, like and subscribe to the podcast. But way more important in terms of the way I look at it is who can you share the podcast with? Why? Because so many sales leaders struggle with the same outcomes that we've gotten forever because we're doing it wrong. The way we do sales training leads to unforced errors. And the more sales leaders that understand systemically the things that they can change that will dramatically change their outcomes, the better it is for the sales profession as a whole. Well, this week, man, you want to talk about a topic that really lights people up. Sales call preparation. Oh, yes, that is high on my list of favorite topics. You know, when I'm going to do training or a keynote address of some kind, how about we talk about call preparation? And people's eyes glaze over like, what? Exactly. But I think that's part of the problem because it's not seen as, well, it's kind of seen as something that people, well, that's what they do. I mean, ask any salesperson, do you prepare for your sales calls? What do you think they're going to say? Well, of course I do. I mean, of course, in their head, they're like, yeah, well, of course I do. I've been doing this for 15 or 20 years or 10 years. I'm good at it. I'm experienced. I've had success. When I go into a sales call, I mean, I'm on fire. You know, I know I can tap dance with the best of them. Yes, except that's not call preparation. I have observed, I mean, it's hard to tell how many, but let's just say tons of sales calls in 40 years, tons of them. And most of them are comedy hour. I mean, they meander along until they maybe get a little traction, or maybe the customer says, well, hey, why are you here? Or what do you got for me today? Or what's on your mind? You know, they don't have any real structure. We don't put them at ease. We don't move forward. We don't know exactly what we want to do. We begin to talk about us, and that's all we do is talk about us. And it's, you know, we show up and waste their time, disrupt their day to tell them all about us and how great we are. And that's our preparation? No. But ask a salesperson. Man, I learned this at a very, very young age. Was very fortunate to have a very good sales manager at the age of 24. And before we went into any sales call, he would stop because, yes, sales leaders, he rode with me every month in real, genuine sales calls and coached me and watched me and worked with me and trained me and developed me. And we would have conversation going into the call. We would have what he called curbside coaching coming out of the call. And every call was a learning opportunity. But going into the call, first thing he would say, why are we here? What are we doing? What's our objective? What are we trying to accomplish? Who are you seeing? He insisted that I have a plan and that I was prepared for what was going to happen in the call. Why is that? Because don't you know, every sales call is different as dictated by the sales process. As an aside, you do have a sales process, don't you? A very specific process that you ask your people to follow, not just something in the CRM that you check a new box. I mean, a real sales process, maybe for another time. But each part of the sales process has different call objectives. Well, Kelly, we know that. I mean, first call, we know that we're just going in to introduce ourselves. Okay, how do you prepare for that? And people look at me like I've lost my mind. What are you talking about? I mean, we're going to go in and, have a conversation, talk. Okay. How do you prepare for that? Because that call, that first call, that prospecting call looks different than just a discovery call and a solution presentation call and a negotiation call and a concept presentation call and on and on. Much, much different each time we go into a call. Do you know exactly what you're going to do inside that call? Do you know why? Do you know what qualification factors you don't know yet, and you've got to sprinkle that conversation with some critical questions to get that information? Do you know who all the decision makers are? Do you understand the challenge? Are you here to meet more people or to get more specific information? Are you here to begin to create value in the prospect's mind? What kinds of questions will you be asking to create that dialogue? What kinds of objections might they have? Sound complicated? That's because it is. This is one of the reasons why it is so incredibly difficult to be great at sales. If anybody could do it, everybody would be doing it, and it wouldn't pay what it pays. When roughly 5 or 6% of salespeople are elite, and maybe 3 out of 4 are failing fairly significantly, you have to ask yourself why. Do you train your salespeople to be prepared for a sales call? How to do that? Well, let me give you some ideas. First off, in your sales training, do you help them understand the necessary elements that have to be in place for an order to happen? Ever thought about that? What all needs to be in place very clearly in order for an order to happen? Well, first off, they need to understand exactly what the prospect or customer hopes to accomplish. What outcomes do they hope to create? What challenge or problem are we trying to solve, or what new outcome are we trying to create? What problem, challenge, issue are we solving? Do we need to help them make it better, faster, easier? I mean, we need to understand those things so we can speak directly to what's going on in their head instead of just showing up and putting on a dog and pony show and hoping that they like it, which is, by the way, what most salespeople do. No, I mean, you know, and I know, if you've watched enough sales calls and been in this game for very long, you know that that's exactly what happens. Do they understand the prospect's current situation? What they have to work with? What kind of labor challenges, energy costs, organizational constraints, what the boss wants? Do you understand their current situation? No? Then those are questions that we're going to need to ask. Do you know who the decision makers are? And do you have them all present? Do you have a plan to incorporate them into future meetings? Do you know what their agendas are? Yes, plural, agendas. The professional agenda is simple, the kind of equipment they want, the solution they're looking for, the outcomes that they need to make happen, the problems they're solving, and so forth. But what about the personal agenda? I mean, people buy for personal reasons. They want to look good. They want to get promoted. They want to make life easier. They want to solve that problem so they have more time available. Listen, I want to make this as clear as I possibly can, and you need to write this down or internalize it. When salespeople are not prepared in sales calls, inevitably it will drag out the buying process. Give you a great example, great analogy. Recently had subcontractors in to do some work around the house. Now, you would expect an experienced subcontractor to come in and be completely prepared, because they should have asked some good questions on the telephone. They should have found some things out. Oh, you say, hey, hang on, maybe that first call is to find out what's going on. Yes, clearly, they could come in and say, listen, I'm here today to find out exactly what the problem is so I can determine exactly what tools and resources I might need to solve that problem. If only that were true. If only, I don't see that happening. I deal with subcontractors a lot. Don't see it happening. Okay. But yes, it could be that. You know what is much more common? They show up and they go, hey, we found out that we're probably going to need this because of that. We already knew that was a problem. Well, yeah, I forgot to put that on the truck, or I found out there's a part that I'm going to need. Now, look, I'm not suggesting that you'll be 100% prepared and get it 100% right 100% of the time. No, I'm not. But it is shocking to me how often these subcontractors show up. Good example from last week. This happens regularly. Hey, you don't happen to have such and such tool in your garage, do you, that I could borrow? Seriously? I mean, I started thinking about this last week. It sounds exactly like what salespeople do. When you show up unprepared, it's going to extend the buying cycle, and we're seeing it all over the marketplace right now. It's being widely reported that the buying process is taking longer than it ever has. I will tell you probably the biggest culprit, not the only culprit, but the biggest culprit is we show up unprepared. Here's the second bad news, is when you show up unprepared and you don't have specific things in mind of exactly what you're going to do, many times the sales process winds up in no decision. We're not clearly differentiated. We have not helped them see clearly why they should make a move and make it now and make it with us. They don't have that because we've not been concise and precise in our sales calls and answered their questions and led them to a compelling answer to their problem. I'd like to tell you it's not true, but I can't. I have had times in the past when I was in the field back in the day, when someone, maybe you've had this happen, a buyer looks across the table and says, listen, real story, Kelly, we love what you've shown us. In fact, it's better than what we have now, but we've decided to stand pat. We're going to stay with what we have because we just think we're doing okay now. We can get by with what we have. Ever have that happen? You walk out scratching your head going, you're getting by with what you have? I mean, it's a disaster because the process of change and making a decision to do things differently and to do it in your favor requires very clear thinking on their part. And when we don't have very clear understanding of each call and its outcomes and its objectives, then it inevitably leads us to a lack of clarity. No, it does. Well, coming up next, I'm going to give you a series of questions that you can ask your salespeople before every call to ensure that they begin to create the habit, the discipline of being prepared for sales calls. Stay with me. I'm Kelly Riggs, host of the Sales Untraining podcast. A couple of quick questions for you. Do you hire salespeople? Is sales turnover far too high in your organization? Do you struggle to find A players for your sales team? Well, these are very common questions, and there is a better way to hire. I'm a partner with Objective Management Group, OMG, and they have been assessing sales candidates for over 30 years. In fact, they've assessed over 2.5 million salespeople. Now, this is a very different type of assessment. First thing out of your mind is it another behavioral assessment? Is it a psychometric tool? Is it a personality quiz? No, nothing like that. It is based on 21 very specific sales competencies. And you need to listen to this. This is crazy. It is 91% predictive of sales performance. That's right, 91% predictive. You can't even make a claim like that without the science behind it. Listen, if you struggle to find the right people, or if you just need a lot more help in the hiring process and making sure you're getting in front of the right people to hire, please email me, kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Oh, by the way, and you can absolutely try it for free, and it has a guarantee. kelly@bizlockerroom.com. Back to the show. Welcome back. It's Sales Untraining, your weekly sales strategy guide designed to completely rewire your sales brain. We're talking about call preparation, not exactly the kind of topic that lights everyone up, but one of those foundational things that if your people don't do well, as I mentioned in the first segment, it's costing you in significant ways, extending your buy cycles, resulting in no decisions, and creating a lot of drag against the process of securing orders. And we talked about one of the critical things that you can do in your training when you bring new people on and your ongoing training is that people really need to understand, your salespeople need to understand the things that put together an order. What has to be in place in order to actually secure an order? You have to understand the customer and their problems, challenges, and situation. You have to understand what their buying process looks like. You need qualification items in place, decision makers, funding, all of the kinds of things that go into qualifying something adequately so that you know you should push forward. You also have to help them understand that there are different reasons why people make decisions, and those are conversations we want to have. One of the things I didn't mention, really critical, is that the customer has to connect to the value that you're presenting to them in the solution. It's not valuable unless the customer perceives it to be valuable. And it's got to fit their personal and professional motivations. There are so many things that we need to do in order to create a successful sales call. And a third reason why this is critically important, by the way, is because time is money. And every time I have to make extra sales calls, just like that subcontractor who has to go and come back and go and come back and doesn't have the right part, the right tool, never going to get it perfect, but tighten it up significantly, that's money. That's time they can't be working on the next job or the next opportunity. And again, communication plays such a big part in that. So many times in dealing with a subcontractor, they don't write things down. They don't know what they should be asking. They don't know which steps are clearly important to progress to the next phase. And so they wind up having to come back multiple times to catch up and do-overs and every other thing in the world. This happens in sales without hesitation. This happens in sales consistently. So if you're working with a salesperson, what are the questions you should be asking them before you go into a sales call? First question, and I mentioned some of these in the first segment, but let's get them down. Why are we here? What is the objective of this sales call? I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. Well, we're going into sell Jim on this concept. Okay, what's the objective? What do you mean? I'm going to sell him. Is the objective to get an order? Are we clarifying information? Are we trying to get a meeting with the decision makers coming out of this? I mean, what are the clear objectives that we need to have? Generalized ideas about why we're here don't work. Oh, we're here to follow up. My all-time favorite. We're here to follow up. Oh, fantastic. What are our objectives? I'm following up. That's it? Are you just going to pop in and do the proverbial, hey, I'm just here to follow up. Want to see if you had an opportunity to take a look at our proposal? Have you discussed, our solution, our quotation? Do you have any questions we can answer? That's you're just going to wing it? Very, very, very bad plan. I just don't see these things in sales training. Why are we here? Who do we need to talk to? Are there people that we have not yet developed relationships with that we should try to contact while we're here, or get referred to, or get introduced to? What is the problem here? What is the challenge? We're not there. It's not that kind of call. Okay, I get it. Right? But if whatever we're there for, basically what the call is about in the sales process, there'll be a series of questions to ask in order to understand exactly what we need to do. One of my favorite things that my boss used to always ask me is, what's your secondary objective? And the first time he asked me that, I'm like, what are you even talking about? Well, if we accomplish what we want to do in the first piece, are there other things that we could accomplish? I mean, clearly there are milestones and objectives. What would be your secondary, even your third objective? What do you do if they don't show up? Ever been to a sales call and they no-showed? What are you going to do? What's your backup plan? What questions do you intend to ask? This is my all-time favorite preparation conversation. What do you think are the questions that you need to ask to create the dialogue that will give you the information that you need? My second favorite, what objections do you think you might hear? What kinds of things are they going to object to? Standard one, of course, is pricing, but, delivery times and lead times and make and model and color and clarity and all of these things that they could potentially object to. Doesn't work with our current system. Are we going to get trained? Do we have to change our processes? I mean, there are a dozen ways that this thing can go off the rails. Are you prepared for it? How will you answer those questions? Sales leaders, I know that this sounds difficult, and it is, but this is what sales leaders do. They train their salespeople and coach their salespeople by asking these questions, and over the course of time, they learn how to prepare adequately for a sales call. In my own career, I ran into that. We'd pull up to the curb, getting ready to go into a call, and they'd say, let me tell you why we're here. Here's what I have in mind. Here's what I'm hoping to accomplish. Here's my objective. There's some things that I need to ask. It looks like this. I don't yet know who all the decision makers are. I'm hoping to find that out today. That's a big agenda, but I've got a sequence I'm going to work through. That's a professional who shows up to play the game at the very highest level. Think about it this way. Can you imagine an attorney showing up to court not having fully prepared for what they think the opposition is going to do and how the judge is going to respond and the way that they're going to present their case? This is what sales training that is effective looks like. And I hope you'll start to do it differently. I'll see you next time.
Sales on Training is a production of Business Locker Room and Pod About It Productions. Music and editing by Doug Branson. To get more Kelly, visit bizlockerroom.com.